rather than cover what's usually covered, I've got 3 unusual long distance riding tips. I just got back from a 5-day trip interstate. 800 kilometers there in one day, 3 days of fun. Right boys, let's go get a drink. And 800 kilometers back, and it got me thinking, what are people's long distance riding tips? Today I'm going to discuss 3 long distance riding tips and a bonus tip at the end. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name's Eamon. Don't forget we've got the $1,000 Resurgence Gear motorcycle clothing giveaway. Details for how to enter the competition later on in this video. Let's get into it. Now, of course, these tips are actually just the way I do things, my preference. So tip number 1 is find your people. When you're going on a long trip with other people, what I find is most important, what is their riding style? Because the way I like to do a long distance trip is I like to go absolutely flat out, fast as the bike will go. No, I'm not allowed to say that. As hard as the bike will go. And I like to have stacks of brakes. So instead of going from petrol tank to petrol tank and cruising along and looking at the scenery, if there is spectacular scenery, I want to stop. But I want to go hard. I want to go like really hard. Otherwise I get bored. If you go really hard, you're going to need brakes. It's unrealistic to ride intensely for hour after hour after hour, especially if the road's not the major highway and it's not all in a straight line. Now, in order to do this, you've got to find the right people to go with. If you're going with people that you've never ridden before, you might be a hard rider and they might be really slow or cruisy and want to really take in all of the scenery. It's going to be well, it's not going to be a disaster. Well, it will be a disaster for me because I will get too impatient with that. What about if the opposite is true? You might want to cruise and look at the scenery and the other dude might want to go flat out. It's completely incompatible. Now, this doesn't apply when you're going in a larger group because larger groups always move slower. There's always more waiting and that has its own pluses and minuses. Now that's my particular riding style. I don't care how long it takes. It actually took us about 14 hours. We left at 4 a.m. We got there at 6 p.m. and that included a fair number of stops, rest stops, fuel stops, food stops, put on wet weather gear stops. Whenever we felt like it, stops. One of the guys ran out of petrol. Faster, Dave, faster! Faster, we've only got about 500 Ks to go. But in return for that long day, I think we get a fantastic ride. There's also the safety aspect for that because if you don't know what the other riders are like, that can cause some potential problems because some riders are just unsafe. And of course, it's all subjective. What is safe? Well, you know, one person's opinion of what's a safe riding style is another person's nightmare. It's very subjective. And of course, you've got to fit that in with the road conditions. At the moment, there are a lot of potholes, a lot of roadworks. There's animals. Your priority is your life. You want to be safe, even though it's a subjective term. You do what's safe for you. Now, if you're riding in a group of people and you don't get this right, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're going to ride too slow and you're going to be easily distracted. And I find that a little bit unsafe. And some people will just get bored and they'll do stupid things. And of course, if you're riding with people who are faster and you're trying to keep up, then that is very dangerous because you'll be riding beyond your capabilities and that's seriously unsafe. Don't do it. So check out who you're going on these trips with before you go. Tip number 2 is have a clear head. And that sounds obvious, but how the hell do you have a clear head unless you deliberately have a plan for this? So what I find is the first day of the trip is usually the day where everybody gets up early. So potentially the first day is the day you're going to be the most tired. What I personally do is the day before, I make sure I drink plenty of water and I only eat meat, which sounds crazy to a lot of people, but what I find is if you don't have anything else, or especially if you don't have any carbohydrates at all, you sleep very lightly, but I also find that I don't need as much sleep. So I'm not used to getting up at 4 a.m. I would have liked to leave at 10 a.m. But I find that even on less sleep, I'm very alert and I'm not tired at all if I eat in that particular way. And then of course, first thing in the morning, I have 500 coffees, get a real buzz, and off we go. Now, I hardly drink any alcohol at all, and I usually keep away from it completely when I'm on my motorbike. I think that's the safest thing to do. And of course, not drinking alcohol goes a long way to keeping a clear head, even if that was the night before, because it's horrible riding with a hangover. If you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I'm right into health and I try and maintain a very healthy diet. I do make exceptions, and when I go away or when I have a big night out, I usually don't stress too much about eating the right thing. I just eat whatever I feel like or whatever is there. I generally tend to the healthiest option anyway, just out of habit over, decades. But I find that junk food really clogs my mind up, makes me lazy, makes me foggy, and it's pretty hard to avoid junk food on a long distance trip. I don't know how it is in your particular country from wherever you're watching this, but here in Australia, most of the stops are going to be at, fast food outlets attached to service stations. So there's a lot of fried food, hamburgers, snacks, that sort of thing. Now, I love a hamburger, no problem. The way I do it is to keep myself clearer during the trip, I just eat less. I'll have that hamburger whenever I feel like it or when I'm hungry, but I'll generally eat less calories, a lot less calories than I would if I was at home and exercising every day. And interestingly enough, riding a motorcycle, especially if you're riding hard, takes a lot of effort and therefore chews up a lot of calories, a surprising number of calories. And of course, to keep a clear head, because riding is tiring and hard riding is more tiring, you've got to have brakes. And on those brakes, it's a good idea to walk around, stretch your muscles, and drink plenty of water. Dave's got the best device you've ever seen, a windscreen wiper on his helmet.
It's flat, so unfortunately can't give you a real good demo, but
you have to do it by hand. Go, give us a demo.
Well, it still works by hand. Still clears the screen. Actually, when you tilt your head to the side doing 100, it just goes by itself.
I can recognise that I'm getting tired and I slow right down because that's probably the safest way to ride. Now, of course, there are a lot of hazards on the road as you're riding anywhere, so that clear head that I'm talking about is going to help you look out for potholes, animals that are going to jump across, especially at dusk and dawn. On this particular trip, couldn't count the number of dead kangaroos and wombats that were at the side of the road that had been hit by cars. Very dangerous if you're on a motorcycle, bad enough in a car. And unfortunately, but luckily he was only doing 70 kilometers an hour, Dave, who was riding the R1, actually hit a kangaroo and he didn't come off, so he was pretty lucky. Long distance riding tip, watch out for kangaroos. This is what happened to Dave.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the route till very late in the piece. It was, I had his back to me in the middle of the road, and it was very dark, and I had zero visibility because of all the bugs on my screen.
So a little bit of damage, but of course everybody takes duct tape with them when they go on a trip, don't they? And look at that repair job. He found his indicator this morning, and he's done a great job. Does it work? Indicators? Yeah, so he's wired it up again. Beautiful. There's also police to watch out for, and there's your actual motorcycle. So especially if you're riding it hard for long periods of time, anyone who's ridden a motorcycle for a long time will understand that you get in tune with your bike, and you've got to keep a clear head so that you notice if anything goes wrong, if there are weird noises or rattles or vibrations. You'll know if you know your bike and you're not off somewhere daydreaming. Number 3 is preparation. It sounds so basic and boring. Yeah, prepare for the trip, make sure things are right. But you'd be surprised at the number of people who don't think through what's going to happen and don't prepare for the trip. So what I always do is I check over the bike. I actually check the main or the critical fasteners on the bike. You can get a list of those on the internet. Make sure that nothing is loose. I make sure the tires are okay. I make sure that the bike's been serviced if it's due. And of course, I don't do these things the day before. You've got to allow a little bit of time for something going wrong so that you're not going to miss your trip. Preparation also includes clothing. On this particular trip, I kid you not, before 3 p.m. on the first day, we went through rain and then sunshine probably 5 or 6 times. It was driving us crazy. Wet weather gear on, wet weather gear on. It was cold anyway. In the end, we gave up and just said, well, we're riding with wet weather gear. Probably ranged from 5 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius, and that's a pretty big range for riding on a motorcycle. So of course you need the appropriate clothing. You also want comfort, which brings me to the point of the Resurgence Gear $1,000 giveaway. You've got to be in it to win it. This is a small channel, so there's going to be minimal entries. Your chances of winning this are sky high. That's a ceiling, not a sky, but you get the point. Now all you've got to do, every $150 worth of purchase at Resurgence Gear gets you 1 ticket in the draw. And at Christmas time, you're going to be one happy camper and you're going to be saying, thank you, Eamon. I wish I had sent you a Christmas present, because you'll be sitting there with $1,000 worth of fantastic motorcycle gear. It really is great gear. Check out this fantastic hoodie. AAA rated gear. Check out these jeans, super comfortable. They've got this fantastic stretch in them. These are the most comfortable jeans you have ever experienced in your life. Everybody's been on a trip where you're stopping at the side of the road because somebody needs something and everything's coming out of the bags, right? Just think through what you might need and the things that you're going to have to access, put them near the top. Think about what you're going to use and think about what you're not going to use. Things like a change of gloves, wet weather gear, your wallet. They've all got to be at the top where you can access things. Extra straps always come in handy. They don't take up any space. Sometimes when you're off the beaten track, places only take cash. So I take a wad of cash with me. I've got a very slimline charger that connects to my phone and powers pretty much everything. It lasts for days and days and days. And it's smaller than a phone. It's fantastic because we all rely on our phones for maps, and you put the map on your phone, it starts to chew through the battery. A lot of people are using their phones as a wallet now. You need power. You're never 100% sure about the circumstances of what you'll get at the other end of the journey, so take power. When it comes to maps, I always find it's a good idea to actually look at the route before you leave so that you know where you're going. I know Google tells you everything, but you'd be surprised at the number of times that Google sends you in the wrong direction or something happens, you can't access the maps. I'm probably old school. I've learnt to use a map the old way. I find it impossible to get lost because you know your bearings, you know the major towns and cities are in certain directions. So you can get there even without a map, maybe not the fastest way, but it makes it impossible to get lost. Bonus tip, most important tip of all, take the scenic route. People go down the main highway. How boring is the main highway? It's dead straight. There are tax collectors with radar guns all over the place. There are cars everywhere. We went along the coast. It was absolutely beautiful. I'll put some footage up.
I got all the signs, but I couldn't run then. I don't blame myself, couldn't see it coming. I know now, that's how they do it.
Take the windy roads. Yes, yes, yes. It's going to take forever to get there, but you're going to love it. This is particularly true if you've never seen that particular area. Why are you in a hurry? Do it my way. Hurry, hurry, hurry while you're riding and then take in the scenery. Now, if you actually look at the map before you go and study the route that you're going to take, you'll probably find that there are a whole lot of places to stop at, things to do or to see on the way. I think everything in Australia is big. Check out the big lobster. Let's see how big it actually is. That's big. Now, if you're just following blindly where Google directs you, you're going to miss all of those things. You heard it here first. Now, of course, all these tips are subjective. You'll have some fantastic tips to tell me, so put them in the comments. So if you like this video, you're going to like last week's video where I crashed the VIP lounge at the Harley event that I was talking about today. That was the long distance trip I just went on. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.